One thing that most people enjoy is a good rom-com. And on today's episode, you're going to get to see five authors who write comedy and romance in their varying ways to create their books that either dive very much into rom-com territory or is always associated with it. Um, I just kind of want to give y'all a primer that the majority of the panel is attending Black Romance Book Fest, which is happening this weekend if you're watching it on May 31st when the episode airs. Black Romance Book Fest is taking place from May 30th to June 1st. I did not assume that when the panelists signed up, we were all going to be attending Black Romance Book Fest. So if you're watching this or listening to this episode on May 31st or June 1st, make sure you go by everyone's table and say hey. If you're watching it or listening to it later, sorry, can't help you. But we get into a lot of things that are funny, that do bring the laughter. We do kiki it up and enjoy ourselves, but we also dive into some real serious things about the subgenre and how people view it and the struggles and the successes and everything in between when it comes to romantic comedy as a publishing and or TV movie just the industry and the idea and everything that surrounds romantic comedy. So I hope you're ready for a fun conversation. Also, there's a few little hijinks because I was doing some outside activities during this. So we do have a couple of moments of just funny laughter, banter situations where we were like joking about me being outdoors and how I could have been a romantic comedy subplot if I wanted to. Anyway, I hope y'all are ready. I absolutely love this panel, and I just want to give a big shout out to Mia Heintzelman, who at points kind of took over the conversation for me when I was having some technical difficulties. You are a gem. Love you. And here we go. All right, so let's get started with introductions and like tell us a little bit about how you got started as an author, a little bit about yourselves. Whoever would like to start can go first.
Okay, so I'm Olivia Linden. I've been writing for a long time. I've been writing since like third grade, but I decided to publish back in 2013 for the first time. And I'm just a romance fanatic. I've been reading romance since I shouldn't have been reading romance. Okay, so I always knew I wanted to like write a book. And initially, I was like more into sci-fi type stuff, but there always had to be like a romantic element to it. And so I think it was like 2012, 2011-ish. I read one of those really popular books at the time, and I was like, "Hey, you could do this. Just go ahead and do it." So, yeah, I started writing. I took a long break. I took like a 7-year break, and I came back in like 2022. And now I'm, focused on building this catalog.
I know that's right.
I'll go next. I'm Ashlyn Harmon. Like Olivia, I have been writing love stories way longer than I should have been. I how do I even want to word this? I really decided to sit down and publish. I originally wanted to query and go trad. But in 2022, I was in corporate America for 6 months and it sucked my soul out. And I decided to pursue publishing, self-publishing, and freelance editing, and started working towards my goal to make romance books my entire life. I have published 2 books. My 3rd book comes out in just over a month.
Exciting.
I'm Monique Fisher. I have been writing since 5th grade, and I decided to turn it into a career in college because I got a big laugh from a play that I wrote. I was a theater major, so I my concentrations were playwriting and stage directing. That led to pursuing TV writing and then comic book writing. So I started bouncing around different mediums until I found novel writing, and I realized I could um, combine my love of writing with the fact that I'm a complete and utter control freak by being self-published in indie. So I have written so far. How many books have I written? I released my debut in November of 2022, and I'm getting ready to release my 7th book in August. So,
Cool.
Amazing.
thank you.
Hi, I'm Lindo Forbes. I write contemporary romance, and I started reading when I was a child. My immigrant parents would let me read whatever I wanted because that meant I was somewhere they could see me and quiet, um, and just let me read. And so I just constantly had my nose in a book, always, always, always. I read everything sci-fi, fantasy, romance. I love it all. And during lockdown, when my brain couldn't handle police just murdering black and brown people with impunity, I needed safety of the happily ever after that romance did. And as I was reading them, I thought, well, the put the thing you want in the world. And so I made an attempt. And full disclosure, Randy did the proofread of my debut. So there. At the end of June, book 3 of my first series will be in the world.
Yay.
Hey, congrats, girl.
Congrats. I'm Mia Heintzelman, and I write contemporary rom-coms, drom-coms, and a little bit of dark romance. And I got my start in 3rd grade also, Olivia.
Okay.
But it wasn't romance. It was I won a trophy for this little story. It was called Dare It and the Parrot. Really imaginative, you know.
I like it.
uh, and that little trophy, kind of stayed with me my whole life. It was always on the shelf somewhere. Um, I wasn't really great at a lot of other things. I tried a lot of things, but I wasn't really great at anything more than writing and coming up with stories. So I always kept looking back at that little trophy and thinking, wonder if I write it. So then I did some children's book when I became an auntie, like the 12th time. I did poetry, and I still write some poetry because that's just me, you know, like an outlet on the page. And then one time I was in the back of a romance book, and it was like, would you want to write for us? And I was like, do I want to write for you? So then I got craft books because that's where the answers were always in a book for me for everything. To apply for college, to buy a home for the first time, everything was the answers was in a book. So I started pulling up craft books, and then I was like, okay, we're gonna try this. And then I published the first romance in 2017, and it was horrible. Later unpublished it.
No.
Yes, I'm going to rework it at some point in life, but yeah, no. And, and then I came out with a second one in 2018, which is slightly better. And with every book, my goal is to just become a better writer. So hopefully I'm way better than the books that I wrote in 2018. But yes, I love writing, and it's the thing that feeds my soul.
I love that. Welcome,
Oh, and my book
everybody.
comes out in 1 month from today. My next
Yeah.
book.
Right.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah,
June
We're almost
24th.
booked.
correct.
I'm June
Okay, yeah.
26th.
So we're
Look at us. We're about to be
oh, look at
I'm
all this.
June
Look at all this.
27th.
So the recording is live May 31st. So I just need y'all to know if y'all are watching this on May 31st or any day after that. We got plenty of books coming
Yes.
up. So there's always this discourse course around various different aspects of like what fits into a subgenre of romance, right? Be it dark romance, be it urban, be it romantic comedy, which is what we're here for today. So I want to know what y'all's definition of a romantic comedy is. I've heard this from Mia before, but I'm curious about everybody else.
Okay, I'll start on this one. Um, for me, it's 50-50. I need 50% romance and I need 50% comedy. So I feel like when the imbalance is there and it's too heavy on the romance and not enough comedy, that's when it doesn't fit into the subgenre. But we need to laugh. We need some comedic situations at least. It does not have to be slapstick as far as I'm concerned. It just needs to have a lighter banter to it and just more of a comedic situation. The meet cute needs to be funny. There's that best friend who's the mirror who's going to be telling you all these things. And it's just a lighter tone to it, is what I'm going to say.
I agree
I'm going
with
to pass
Mia.
it to Lindo. I think we should just pass it to somebody.
All right, we'll do that. I do agree with me. I think that a lightness is required in romantic comedy, and I think what a lot of people mistake for rom-coms is that it's not dark, that it's not fantasy, that it's not
Mm-hmm.
historical. Like then whatever's left is rom-com, and that's not true. Contemporary romance is a subgenre separate than rom-com, in my humble opinion. And I think that anything can be made comedic. It's about the way that people respond to it, the way people
Mm-hmm.
react to their circumstances. And so the lightness or the inherent sort of absurdity of life is what I think
Yes.
contributes to rom-coms in a way that it doesn't have to be in contemporary, in historical, in paranormal, in dark, in that way. Go ahead, Monique. What do you think?
I just think that it needs to be funny. I mean, lightness, perhaps, but you can write a dark rom com. Like Evelyn Lee's getting ready to release one.
Yeah.
So as long as it's funny, and just piggybacking on what Lindo just said, a lot of folks, it's like contemporary romance, rom com, or I've literally seen people say, "Oh, well, if the cover is illustrated, their immediate thought
Mm-mm.
is rom com," and it's like that's
Has nothing to do with it.
not a definer. So yeah, as long as it's funny, people the comedy part seems to get lost in translation, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
comedy means humor. It means funny. It's meant that for a long time. I know that language evolves, but between the Greek comedies, commedia dell'arte, Shakespeare, comedies always meant ha ha ha. So as long as you got ha 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 going on, like for example, my book, Spend My Life with You, it's a tad bit more swoony than funny, but you still laugh. And its predecessor, the book that came before it, Hot for Teacher, in my opinion, is a little bit funnier than swoony. But as long as you have like a good balance of both, and as long as
Right.
the reader is
The
laughing,
balance.
that's what counts. So that's just like how I feel. But yeah, Ashlyn, what are your thoughts?
I agree with what everybody said. When I first released my debut, Maybe One Day, I hesitated to call it a rom com, but it did kind of fit in that, Jen DeLuca, I'm trying to think of some others, Abby Jimenez, where you're gonna laugh, you're gonna swoon, but you also might cry. And so the
Mm-hmm.
books that straddle that line, it's hard to kind of pinpoint where they need to go. But I mean, for me, it's a good balance of everything. Like everybody else has said, you can have very realistic characters who go through real things. Like my books all feature plus size female leads. They're in different paths of struggling with their body image and their acceptance. Tell Me Tomorrow features a public outing without consent, but they're like they've evolved, they've grown, and those two books also, honestly, not to like bring my own bell to my own horn, those two books
Ring your
have the
bell, Ashlyn.
That's what
That's
they're
why
for.
we're
That's
I
what
was
they're
gonna
here.
say,
That's
for.
why we're here.
these
ring it,
two
girl.
books have honestly one of the best bromances I have ever read. I mean, they get drunk in matching tattoos. It's really non-toxic masculinity. So there's these layers of very realistic things that my readers can relate to, but you're also gonna laugh. You're also gonna, feel happy and light and fall in love with those characters by the time you're done. So I really did hesitate with, especially Maybe One Day, to get the first time somebody called it a rom com. I'm like, is it though? And but there are different layers to it, and there's different, you're gonna cross different lines and things like that. So I think for a lot of people, rom-com is a weirdly subjective term, but like Monique said, you have to laugh. If you're not laughing once in that book, it is not a
Right.
rom-com.
Right.
But again, there are those books that do handle the really hard things like death and grief and things like that are still going to make you laugh. Olivia.
My turn. Basically, I agree with everything everybody said. Like Ashlyn, I didn't really even look at my books as rom-com. Well, not all of my books. My R&B series, the first two books are considered rom-com because you're going to consistently laugh in almost every scene of the book somehow. Whether she's talking to her friends and they're razzing her, or the banter between her and the MSC, or just a situation that happens. So I never even just was thinking that way. But rom-com to me, when I think about it, it's like, yeah, this is going to make you laugh. As the romance is happening, you're going to enjoy yourself. You're going to be kicking your feet. You're going to think back on that as a funny, you know what I'm saying, moment as a whole, and not just, oh, it had some cute parts. So, like Mia was saying, that balance, it's as much romance as it is, comedy, and the comedy doesn't get lost in the romance.
I just want to add that I think that a big problem overall with what we're struggling with defining romantic comedy also happens with the way we consume TV. Like in the Emmys, for example, or the Golden Globes, they'll be like best comedic, and you're like, that show's not funny. Like why is that in that category? That show's not funny, but because it's not a drama or it's not serious, they have nowhere else to put it. And then that whole idea of what romantic comedy or what comedy even is has been diluted to a point where now we struggle to identify it anymore. It used to be a very like identifiable genre, and I feel like that's also
Right.
now a struggle. Like Orange is the New Black, sure, you might have chuckled, but that is not a funny show. It is serious, and it is hard, and it is miserable
Right.
because it's about people in jail.
Right, right.
Yep.
And most of the people are not having a good time in jail. And but it was always in the comedy category, always, because it was a half an hour show. And I just feel
And
like
Bear.
The Bear, that is some
The
stressful.
Bear is considered comedy?
It's considered
in-
comedy in the when the Emmys.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lindo.
No, but exactly that. In those categories,
No.
it's considered comedy. And so that's what I'm saying. I feel like we've lost the ability to do that because we keep diluting, not
Lost the
but
plot.
we keep, yeah.
Well,
we keep
I
diluting
get what you're
comedy
saying,
means,
Lindo.
and it's a
It's kind of
problem.
like rom-com or comedy has become a catch-all for things that people
Right,
struggle to
right.
define.
Yeah.
And so I'm agreeing with you too, but I think mostly there needs to be a solid balance. We need the happily ever after, happy for now, for the romance aspect of it, and that has to be central, but we also need to laugh a lot. We need to have a good time. It needs to be something that you come out on the other end feeling lighter with. And I really feel like, yes, it can also handle hard topics, but with a softer hand,
Yes.
and just come out feeling good about it. It's a
Yeah.
feel good genre, is what I feel, or subgenre.
100%.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Mia. I think that, especially within my books, even though we're tackling those very real things, it's very realistic how it happens. It's not
Yeah.
a big focus. It's almost more subtle in the sense that
Right.
by the time you finish it, you're like, wait a minute.
Well,
We
also, we
handled
have three-dimensional characters, and
correct.
three-dimensional characters are going to have to go through some things.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I just think that shouldn't even be a factor in people defining the subgenre, because whether you're dealing with grief, sometimes you have to laugh because
Right.
it's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
You know,
True.
like it's hard.
Yeah.
It's an outlet.
It's the comedic
Yeah, but
relief.
so
It's
yeah,
definitely the comedic relief.
Exactly.
I think that it all comes down to, as everyone has said, there can be things that are happening that show that these characters are three-dimensional, realistic, and you can relate to them, but it also has to have the comedy. I don't consider
yes.
anything I write romantic comedy, but I've had people comment to me and say, like, oh my God, this is the best comedy I've read. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, maybe they left feeling lighter. So
Right.
I think that it's just that we have to kind of look at the idea that, yes, you know, being plus size in any community can be looked at in a weird way sometimes. You know, if you're queer, if you live in a different country and you're moving somewhere, and then it's all of a sudden like culture shock. Dealing with that can still have comedy and romance in it, but it's how you handle it that makes it a romantic comedy versus something else.
Thing
Yes.
that also gets lost is like me and I are gonna be on a panel. I think are you on the rom-com panel?
I don't know. I
How humor can
gotta look.
it's basically showing how humor can actually help the love story, and a lot of it almost feels like, okay, well, you have the swoony parts and then you have the comedic parts. And it's like, oh, yeah, but the comedic parts can actually help with the swoony parts. So, and I think a lot of
Yes.
times folks don't really focus on that. Like, for example, banter, period. Well, most of the time, the banter is always like, it's cute, it's funny, it's whatever, but it also shows you who these two characters are. It shows you who they are as individuals, and it shows you how they interact as a couple. And then as
Mhm.
you read more of it, you're seeing their relationship grow and become stronger and become more and more in love, and
Mhm.
it's the humor that's allowing you to see that. And
Right.
at least I try to do that with my books. It's like I try to have the humor not just serve the purpose of making the reader laugh, but also it serves the purpose of, like, pushing the plot forward. It's like
Right.
having a sex scene. The sex scene has to push the plot forward. The humor has
Right.
to push the plot forward too.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
has to, like, show the reader these two people are getting to know each other better. They're enjoying each other's company. They're getting to know each other. That way, when they finally get to the "I love you" or the kiss or the sex scene or whatever, it's earned. So
Yeah,
Yes, that part.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
growth.
And it's
And
also
I
good to
agree too
tone.
with
Everything has
the
to
Right?
matter.
absurdity. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I was saying there's a tone to rom coms. So even
Yes.
when we talk about like the real life stuff happening or the deep stuff, you can bring it back up with that tone, bring it back up to the tone with the comedy,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
that's that balance again of whatever else is going on, the comedy is always going to keep it, you know, right here, level and funny
Yes.
and, light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the next question was all about the nuances, and so we kind of hit on that. But a second part to that, well, no, I naturally thought it was going to do that anyway, but I did want to have it as a separate question just in case. Y'all are smart, intelligent human beings. We know how conversations like this go. Let's be for real. Um, but there was a second part to it that kind of touched on when you had someone tell you that your book, they didn't think it was funny, and but you kind of bill it as this romantic comedy, right? So you're like, okay, I wrote this
Mm.
for myself and for the people that generally read my type of comedy. How do you kind of handle when a reader or an agent or an editor comes to you, or another author is just like, this ain't funny, this ain't it? Like, how do you go about that? Mia, let's start with you
I
again.
feel
um, well, I think that, okay, if somebody comes to me and is saying that this doesn't fit into a rom-com, then I'm probably going to be like, well, why do you say that? Like, why are you asking that question? Because again, I think it has more to do with what are we centering in the book. So if the character has something happen that's traumatic in their past, which a lot of my characters have gone through things, and it can be viewed as traumatic, some of the things that people have gone through. But what am I centering in the book? I'm centering the love story, and I'm centering, as Lindo says, the absurdity, which I kind of love that word now, of the situation. So you're thrown into this situation, and now you just kind of have to deal with it. So I'll go with Last Christmas Crush. You know, his mother died in childbirth. So I wanted to highlight maternal mortality of Black women in childbirth. And that's part of his backstory, but it's not the center of the story. It's something that has shaped who he is as a character. And with her, they lost their father at some point back in the day, and their grandmother and the grandfather, but now they're back home for the holidays. There's a second chance. He's hot, and she didn't realize that he was hot and that he really wanted her. He always wanted her, and now they got this second chance. And it's going to be Christmas overload, candy canes, whoever else I can think of that's Christmas related. I'm going to just throw it all in there. And now they've got to figure out how they're going to work together. And that's going to be hilarious and funny. And so we're not focusing on their backstory and the things that are in their past, but that have shaped them. So if somebody is saying to me again, this is not a rom com, I'm going to probably want to know why, or give them a little, I guess, short, tiny education on what makes something a rom com.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not judging just based on the cover either, because I have illustrated covers and I love them. Um, but that doesn't really determine what is a rom com.
Right. Right.
And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Ashlyn.
I completely agree with everything you just said. Um, Coming at it from an editor standpoint first, I do developmental editing, so that is part of what I look at. Like, do you hit those genre conventions? And
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the other things people forget is humor can be subjective. Um,
Yes.
like, I really like I have a dry, witty sense of humor. I know that I do. It can border on morbid at times, and just because, you don't find something funny doesn't mean that somebody else. So I would absolutely, as an editor, I would try to find comp titles for that author that would help
Mm-hmm.
them maybe build that comedy up a little bit, finding those comp titles and understanding the differences in humor. As an author, I would do exactly what Mia said. I mean, I honestly wouldn't change anything. And again, the really great thing about being in the author community, especially the romance community, is I read what I write, and I'm okay hyping up other authors, even to
Mm-hmm.
defend my own books. Like, I always hype up other authors. I was at a signing and I didn't hype up my books. I hyped up somebody else's. And so showing those comp titles, showing that difference in the humor spectrum. I mean, there are comedians I don't find funny, but I know my other friends do,
That's true.
and helping readers understand that just because they didn't find it funny doesn't necessarily mean somebody else would. And also, does that ruin the book for you? Do you still
That's
like the story? Do you still take something from it? Because I mean, I've read several romantic comedies that I'm just like, this isn't funny, but it's still a 5-star read for me. This book is amazing. So
right.
it's really that difference in, as authors, we always tell ourselves, my book's not for everybody, but it is for somebody. So
Mm-hmm.
keep that in mind as readers too, and keep that in mind as authors when you're interacting with those readers who are like, I think you might have this categorized wrong. And kind of
Right.
at the end of the day, it's your book, and you also know if it's part of a series where it's going. So keeping that stuff in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with Monique.
Thank you, Ashley. I honestly have not had that happen, but what's interesting is my debut novel, Where There's Smoke, I see it as like a romantic drama. And I've had people tag me in reviews saying, this was a very interesting rom-com. And I was like, okay. Like, you gave it 5 stars, call it what you want. But yeah, I haven't had anybody tell me that my rom-coms aren't rom-coms or they aren't funny. And I think it's because I kind of go for the silliness. I kind of go
You do.
I have
You
I
do.
yeah I do. I go for the silliness. Like in Hot for Teacher, there's a scene where like okay, well the overall plot of Hot for Teacher is that it's a 38-year-old divorced single mother who has a one night stand with a younger man, and then a week later she finds out that he's just been hired as her son's new third grade teacher. So they decide to keep seeing each other in secret, and at one point she invites him over to her house. They oversleep. Her kid and her parents come home,
Right.
and she has to get him out of the house. So she's like almost like practically pushing this man out of the window. He has to remind her, I'm still naked. So I try to like have goofy or like silly stuff happen in
Yeah.
my books because I have like a goofy sense of humor. So I write stuff like that in the hopes that other people find it funny too. So while I haven't had somebody tell me your books aren't funny, I have had people tell me, they're kind of cheesy and corny, but it's like I write rom coms, and that kind of comes with the territory. But,
Did you laugh?
so
That's all
I
that
don't take that.
matters.
It's like I don't take that as an insult. To me, corny and cheesy is like, well, Yeah. um, but I have had somebody tell me that the book that I wrote that was a standalone that was, a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more, heavy. There's trigger warning, there's parental death, there's, a lot of stuff that happens in there. And somebody was like, "Oh, this was such a funny rom-com." I'm like, "There's humor in it, but I wouldn't categorize it as that." But hey, like I said, you gave it 5 stars. Call it what you want.
Right.
Your turn, Olivia. Oh wait, did you?
So my thing is get a second opinion, right? Because one person versus 100 people,
Yes.
So for me, it's like if you're confident in what you're doing, even if somebody comes to criticize it or doesn't necessarily agree, I try not to like feed too much into it. Now, if multiple people keep saying, "Oh, well," then it's something to look at. But
Right.
for the most part, like we said with the nuance, like my personality is goofy and dry humor. Like I go back and be real silly or, really sarcastic. And most of my FMCs have that quality somewhere, in there. It's just how much you want to showcase it. So, like I said, me not even thinking, people were coming and telling me, "Hey, this is rom-com, your books are funny." And then I had a few people that were like, "Well, are you sure? Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Are you sure?"
That's what I say.
I'm
Yep.
good. Are you sure? So it's just like, see what the majority say. Because there's always going to be one or two people that don't think you're
Mhm.
funny or don't get what everyone else gets. Like, have you
Mhm.
ever read reviews and there have been a couple people that have like a take on your book and you're just like, did you
Oh
read
yeah.
this book? Like, where are you getting that from?
Exactly.
So, you know, one person can't really stop the show. Linda.
Hi. I think, especially as someone who's fairly new to it, like my third book is coming out, it's all still very new to me. Um, Finding my readers who like what I do is more important to me than like making my author brand and making an experience that is sort of consistent. If you pick up a Lindo Forbes book, this is kind of what you're going to get, is more important to me than worrying
Yes.
about a person thinking it is or isn't funny in the grand scheme of things. Because again, like Ashlyn said, it's all very subjective. And honestly, what people take out of a book says more about them than it does about me, the author.
That part.
It's, what you took out of this piece of art is about you, not about me. So, do you think it's funny when I say a white woman's tears is going to be the death of us all? I don't know, but it's true. And so, you you can laugh at the absurdity of all of our lives being held hostage by someone's, fragility, or you can be offended by it, but neither of those things are my problem. Like, neither of those things are my responsibility. So I try to find like the silliness in how people react to life. Something happened to them and
Mhm.
their response to it is what is funny. Do you think it's funny? I can't control that. I wrote it with the intention to show, oh my God, see how silly that is? What happened to that lady? Oh my God, can you imagine? Like, oh my God, I would die. Like, that's the intention. Did you receive it that way? I hope you do. And if you don't, maybe try the next one and that one will get you. I don't, I can't make it my problem yet. I'm too new to let other people's um, opinions and preferences interfere with what I'm trying to create.
Yes.
Agreed.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that because there's so much nuance in it, it becomes this idea of like there's comedy as a trigger response that some people have. It's like, something happened and the only way people can deal with it is to laugh. But that doesn't make
Right.
it not funny. I very much live trauma as a, uh, I can't even talk right.
Right.
Comedy as a,
Well, it's also too, if you think a lot of readers are coming into it with a certain book in mind that they're comparing it to, and it's like
yeah,
I'm not that author.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that too. That
There
you
is
too.
a
know,
lot of comparison, unfortunately, especially like if you're a newer author or a smaller author, even if you're like mid-list, if there's that top of the genre author that everyone gets compared to, it's just like, but that's them, it's not you. And it's okay
Right.
to like two different types of authors who write the same subgenre
Hmm.
without comparing.
Yeah.
I also
I
think
think
that.
we
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Sorry. No, I think that sometimes people get used to the FMC being a certain way. Like if she's not clumsy or if she's not
Yes.
silly or if she's not, insecure or something, they don't think that that character fits the mold.
Yeah.
100%. I agree with that, Olivia, because I write my characters, most of my FMCs, strong-willed. They're usually juggling between business and pleasure because they run businesses, and so they're considered strong. They're not all working at a flower shop or a bakery and clumsy with, flour on their noses at
Mm-hmm.
all time. And there's nothing wrong with those characters. I love them too, but
Right.
that's just not who
Right.
I write.
Yeah.
I'm writing for a specific character and for a specific reader, and it's usually people who want something more, or have loftier ambitions for their jobs and careers. And so I don't write that. And if I don't write that, then she's usually an unlikable character. But is she an unlikable character, or is she just, you just don't see yourself in her? Is that it? You know what I
She
mean?
doesn't fit the standard mold.
Right.
And I do think that all of that is so true, but we have to work like collectively on changing the standard.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct. Well, publishing plays a big role in that, but I do love that indie publishing is kind of setting the tone. It's saying here, even while we're, market testing for Trad Pub, you know, it's saying here readers want this kind of character too.
Yeah.
And so I love that the readership is kind of dictating where things are going to.
Yeah, 100%.
It's
And I
definitely
think
market testing,
that
but I think
in
it's
the
also, go ahead, Linda.
no, go ahead, Randy.
I think that it's also the idea that indie is starting to get more respect than it was 10 years ago. So we are market testing as indie authors, or hybrid authors, but you do see that more indies are getting the respect that they deserve than they were, 10, 15 years ago.
Hmm.
So if as a romantic comedy
I
author
agree.
in
That's what I'm saying.
particular, you see the difference.
Well, because when I say market testing, I'm saying it's showing Trad that this sells.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean by it. Like, I don't know, not necessarily by the definition of market testing, but it's saying,
No,
look at this.
that's what,
You
yeah.
may not see the vision in it, but the readership is there and they're buying this book, whether you like it or not. So then they can go to Indie and say, hey, your books are selling. Now let's pick you up as Trad because we already know your books sell.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I mean by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was agreeing with.
So what now?
This connection is
Now this
killing
would
me,
be
y'all.
a fun rom-com.
Right.
With the connection, like what if it
Misconnection.
pauses in the middle and you think he said something else, or it's like, oh, so he's in love with me. Really, it just paused on the wrong part.
Amazing.
Lindo, you were
She
saying, I
throws
didn't
her
mean to
whole life
interrupt you.
away because of a half of a sentence got cut off. Oh, so good. Quits her job and
Yeah.
moves to a Christmas tree farm because half the sentence got cut off.
Yes.
That made me think of an idea that I had on Blue Sky. There was like a whole thing on Black Sky because like a whole bunch of women got catfished by some dude,
Oh,
and
yes.
I was like, oh my god, that could be the beginning of a rom-com. This
Yes,
woman
it
gets
could.
catfished by a dude who uses another dude's picture, and the guy whose picture gets used falls in love with her.
Yes.
That's
Put
hilarious.
that down, Monique. We will be expecting
Right.
that book in
Right.
2027.
I
Okay,
think
go
we
ahead,
kind of
Randy. Now that you're
yeah. Listen, this connection is making things fun. Lindo, you were in the middle of saying something now, I think.
I don't remember.
Okay, we will move on.
I'm sure it was. It was very profound, you guys. It was really deep and
Absolutely.
very,
Let's
very
just go
witty.
ahead and
So
snap
smart.
it up.
So smart. Can't remember.
I'm over here fighting mosquitoes, so if y'all see me do
Oh
it
no.
get away.
at least this is
Um,
happening for rom-com authors.
You know, it's
It's
perfect.
so fitting. It's so fitting. Um, I think we kind of already touched on it as we were diving into the nuance and saying like what doesn't necessarily fall into the definition of a rom-com. But is there anything that y'all can think of that we might not have touched on that kind of pulls away from the idea of what a rom-com is? Because you can have a historical rom-com, you can have a contemporary rom-com, you can have a dark rom-com, but is there anything that does not fit?
I don't think
If
so.
it's
I
not
think it's up
funny.
to the author. Yeah.
That
I
part.
think it's up to the author to manage the subject matter and find the humor in it. And if they don't, then like Monique said, it's not funny and then they didn't do it.
Right.
Right. If it's not funny and it doesn't end happily ever after, it's probably not a rom com.
Right. Having like one or two funny moments doesn't make a
Exactly.
rom-com. You know, and I've seen people like, yeah, you know, there was this real funny part. I'm like, one part, you know? Okay.
And 73 was
Right.
hilarious.
Right. Like what?
73%. It's real funny right there, you know? It's like, what do
Yeah.
you mean?
Like I want to laugh. I'm going into a rom com expecting to laugh. I want to kick my feet up, like you said, Olivia. I want to put on some fluffy socks with a glass of wine and be laughing to myself out loud,
Mm-hmm.
and people around me thinking I'm crazy because I'm laughing by myself. But
And the
that's
humor
okay.
has to be intentional. It
Yes.
Yeah.
has to be
Yeah,
Yeah.
intentional. The number of times I have seen top 10 black rom-com movies and Love and Basketball and Love Jones are on that list, and I'm like, name one intentionally funny thing that happened in either of those movies.
You
I
guys are
mean that
raising
kind
Not
of pulls us.
one.
the pressure.
Listen, but that pulls us into the next question I had about what your favorite romantic comedy is that got adapted into a film or a movie, and it ain't them two.
Well, and it's
No.
really
Mm-mm.
hard
I would
because
never
a lot
even
of
think
them,
those two.
yeah, and a lot of them weren't books first. Like my favorite rom-coms, a
That
lot
too.
of them were books first, and then a lot of the adaptations that I do like kind of skirt what we were saying about rom-coms.
Right.
Like I really think they
Mm-hmm.
did an amazing job with Crazy Rich Asians.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a rom-com? The results may vary, but I think what didn't work for me in the book was describing all of the luxury. Like it was boring after a while listening to every single detail about the watch and the car and the, but it looked amazing on screen. It
Mm-hmm.
was translated so beautifully on screen, where in the book I did get bored of watch descriptions. And also because I'm not in that world. You could tell me the brand. I don't know what that means. Expensive, I guess. I don't know. So that's one that I think worked really well as an adaptation because the things that I found limiting in the text were so beautifully translated on screen. Um, do I think Nick Young is a good boyfriend? No, he's terrible. He let that lady wear her dress from like the Gap all day long, knowing that she was going to go to his grandma's gala and didn't say anything. You just let her walk around in that sundress all afternoon, thinking she was going to leave and then go to your grandma's party, knowing people were wearing designer custom gowns. Sir, please. Like,
Yeah, he was
Nick
wrong for
Young is a
that.
terrible boyfriend. But yeah, but the movie really, really worked because you could visualize the differences in class. You could visualize the struggle. You could visualize the world that he took her from and dropped her in a way that I don't know was as clear in the book. Well, not for me anyway.
Mm.
Well, some
I also
authors
think,
are better at visually describing. So when you're reading, you can see it, and some aren't.
yes,
But when if it does get picked up and translated or adapted, then you can see what the intention was behind it, especially if they're involved in the filming.
yeah, 100%. So that's, I don't have a favorite rom-com that was adapted because my favorite rom-coms have not been adapted and my favorite movies that were books are not necessarily
On the
rom-coms. So
nose.
sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a good answer.
Same.
I
Like my
I
favorite,
feel
my
you
two
on
favorite
that.
rom-coms are two movies I had no business watching when I was a kid. Um, I was born in 1980, so I told my mom, I was like, I really want to go see Pretty Woman, and so she told my brother, go take her to go see Pretty Woman. I was 10. I should know not to see Pretty Woman.
I love
Amazing.
that
And
movie.
I was 12 when Boomerang came out, and my mom took me to go see that. And
Hmm.
I'm like, my favorite comedian of all time is Mr. Edward Reagan Murphy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a shame that he's not hasn't been in another rom com since, because that is like one of the best rom coms ever
One of my
made.
favorites.
Yes, absolutely. Not
And
a book,
like
right? So
like exactly, it's like I quote that thing back at like
Me too.
Marcus, darling. Who knew
Darling.
that Eartha Kitt and Grace Jones were so damn funny?
Yes.
Amazing.
Who say?
Like you have, like there's Ashlyn. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but there's a scene.
I have.
Okay, cool. Like the restaurant. Yeah, the restaurant scene.
Yep.
Where she's like, you're not gay. My brother's gay. You're gay. He's gay.
From the rooter to the tutor.
Now I need to rewatch it. I haven't watched it in forever.
Rewatch.
I'm gonna
That's
add
one of
that.
the
Immediate
things-
rewatch.
That's one of the things
Everybody
I
needs to go
love.
watch it right.
Right
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
Cue it up.
I
Let's have a
quote that
party
thing on a regular
watch.
basis. Yes.
Yeah, it's like one of the things that I appreciate about Eddie Murphy's films, particularly like his films for the culture, for us, is that he'll have people in the movie that, folks that are, like for Harlem Nights, I feel like that movie was basically just him saying, hey, are you a fan of me? Check out these two cats. Check out Richard Pryor. Check out Red Fox. This is where I got it from.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
the movies that he makes that are for us, for the culture, it's like, yeah, I'm funny, but check out these other people. So
The greats
that's one of the
that
reasons why I really
inspired
love that
him.
movie is because
Right.
you like I said, who knew Eartha Kitt and Grace Jones were so damn funny? Like they're divas, they're legends. Pull up to my bumper, Santa baby. But like they were like two of the most hilarious parts of the movie. Them and John Witherspoon during John Witherspoon and Phoebe Drake are only in the Thanksgiving scene. They're only in that one scene.
But you remember them. Everything they did. Definitely
those
scene
two are like two
stealers.
of my most favorite rom-coms. And I really do think, like in hindsight, now that I'm older, I really do think that those two movies really did shape like how I see a rom-com. Because if you look at Boomerang, you got workplace romance, reformed rape, friends to lovers. You got trope after trope after trope. And like I can like write a whole like paper or whatever on why that movie is amazing. And it's funny because now that like I'm getting ready to be 45, and whenever I think about that movie that I saw when I was 12, I just I can appreciate it more, and I can appreciate just how rich and amazing and good the relationship between Marcus and Angela was. Like they earned that HEA. In hindsight, Marcus probably wasn't the best person to end up with because let's face it, he probably wasn't gonna like stay
Shady as hell. She should have never
but
stayed with
now
him.
Now that we're older, let's just be honest. But at the same time, do the suspension of disbelief and believe that him and Angela did have their HEA.
Right.
But at the same time, when you finally get to the end, you're like, these two earned it, and it's an amazing movie, and we should definitely
Did they
watch
earn it
it
though?
together.
Subjective.
What'd you say? Mia?
Subjective.
I said, did they earn it though?
She did.
She did.
Home last night. Yeah. Love should have brought her.
She earned it.
I'm just saying. She earned
I mean,
it.
no,
She,
like
she deserved better.
now that we're older, we can be like, girl.
Right.
but at the same time, if you suspend your disbelief and you watch it again, you're like, you know what?
Yeah, you have to really
I'm happy
suspend the
for them.
disbelief.
I'm happy for them. But,
Agreed.
Yeah.
But I
Couldn't
think
have
one
been me,
thing
but
that
I'm happy for them.
one thing you said, Monique, was like the movies that you described, none of those are adaptations. They're all like original, just film movies. And like Lindo said, you might not like a book, but the adaptation is good. And then some of the books that get adapted aren't rom-coms that are so good as books and as film or TV. And I think that's kind of sometimes what happens with rom-com in particular, that there are movies that are getting adapted, but they're not necessarily good as like they're not the funniest books, or they're not the most easy to kind of
I agree.
see. Yeah, like that kind of what happens. That is kind of what happens most often. Or something gets adapted and
think
they
that
call it a
TV
rom-com and it's not.
That's what I'm saying. But I feel like in TV, they don't understand the definition of a rom-com, and they are just putting all romance into romantic comedy. Because you never say a romance movie. They say a rom-com. They think all romance is rom-com. And I'm going to give you one specific example. Robin Lee, The Idea of You, was a phenomenal book. I really enjoyed the book, right? The way the book ended was certainly not a romance at all, and it wasn't a romantic comedy at all. But the movie adaptation, I mean, I thought it was so cute and everything because they picked these fun character or actors and stuff to fill the role, and then they added to the end to make it a happily ever after. They didn't change
On the
the whole
show,
book.
he She picks him and he
No.
doesn't leave the
Okay,
band.
spoiler for anybody who wants to just pause
Sorry,
right
sorry.
now.
It's a
It ends.
Go ahead
5-year-old
and
book.
skip.
My God.
I know, but what I'm saying is, look, at the end of that book, he is at the door and she doesn't open it. And that's it.
Correct.
It's in. I
Yes.
turned the page looking for the rest of the book. Did somebody steal the rest of the pages? Because where is the romance? What happened? There's no happily ever after. I cried. And then I had to go join her
No.
Facebook group because I needed a support group to talk about this. It was a lot.
And
And
also, what
then
was so bad
the
about that
movie,
was
they
that,
talking about 5 years later.
yeah, well, what was bad about it in the book was that she doesn't open the door and then has the nerve to be sad about it. Bitch, you didn't open the door.
You could have turned the handle.
What's
But
crazy is that
I
the
felt
movie
some kind
got
of way about that.
marketed as a rom-com, and then when I watched it, I was like,
Yes.
this ain't funny.
This is not
It
funny.
wasn't. I told you, film thinks all romance is rom-com.
Right.
That's what they think.
Yeah.
And they pick the funny actors and then they make it swoony and everything. And as long as if they end up happily ever after, then they're happy. The book was great. The movie was great. The book was not a romance. It was not even a romance.
It was a love story.
Yes. They think Nicholas Sparks is rom-com. Sir,
Where's
they,
the
He
they,
does.
comedy?
they die.
He
Everybody's
doesn't
dying
even
in
say
this
that.
book.
He even says my books aren't romances; they're love
Exactly.
stories. Stop
He
calling them
writes love
that.
stories, and all the people die in his books.
Right.
So,
They
yeah,
die or they break up.
Yeah.
So, like,
yeah.
Perfect Find, right? The Perfect Find,
Oh,
the
yes.
book.
Tia Williams, yes.
Delightful, right?
Delightful.
The movie.
They picked good actors.
The actors were good, but were they funny? You know, and I enjoyed the movie. I'm not gonna say I didn't, but it was a romance to me. The movie
It
Right.
was a romance.
romance. It
Not
wasn't
a
necessarily
rom-com.
rom-com,
Correct.
you know?
I 100% agree. And I think this is the key here. Viewers and readers are not romance authors who know the difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The consumer doesn't know. They take what is given to them.
What
You
is
tell
billed
them
and
what it is, and they accept.
And what's
Yeah.
crazy is that back in the day, you could tell the difference. You could even tell the difference just from the movie poster. Like there's that Keanu
Yes.
Reeves, Sandra Bullock movie, The Lake House.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Obviously
yeah.
not a rom-com. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Obviously a rom-com. You could tell just by looking at the movie poster. You didn't even have to look at the damn previews.
Correct.
And now it's just like there's like this murkiness about it, and
Right.
Yes.
Right.
it doesn't.
And I
It
think that's
irritates
why
me.
illustrated covers have confused people because they see a lighthearted looking cover and they think, ooh, this is rom-com. But it doesn't differentiate the tone of it.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is that
Unless you have a good illustrator.
yeah, that's my point. When I was getting ready to release Where There's Smoke, everybody immediately assumes rom-com. Particularly, they just kind of like attach Lenny to rom-com, even though
Lenny
should
is
just be
rom-com
attached
to people.
like Lenny should just be attached to romance, not necessarily rom-com. Because she's done 4 of my covers so far. If you look at the cover for Where There's Smoke, I was very deliberate about that. It's Aaron and Kara gazing into each other's eyes, looking like they're about to kiss in the foreground. And in the background, you see just their life, like photos of their life and a photo of their house and how they built this life together. Then if you look at Hot for Teacher, you got Nathan writing the title on the chalkboard with Latrice holding an apple, and they're both smirking at each other. So I wanted it to show lighthearted, fun.
Mm-hmm.
This is a rom-com. Meanwhile, with Where There's Smoke, I wanted it to be obvious that this is not, there's comedic elements to it, but this is not a rom-com. This is a heartfelt, this was my take on the epic love story. It takes place over the span of 15 years. These two people meeting, falling in love, having a casual relationship, having a child, getting married, having another child, and then career changes and all the other stuff that comes with life. It was my answer to what happens after the HEA. So I was very, very deliberate about it not looking like a rom-com, even though it was illustrated. Meanwhile, so if you look at, it's like if you look at both the covers, to me, it's kind of obvious, but hey.
I think there's also context to be that has been stripped from the illustrated cover conversation, which is that if you want a plus-sized model, if you want a black model, if you want an Asian model, if you want a man that has this feature that is not that is outside of the conventional handsome straight white guy, you might have to draw that person.
Yeah.
It's not going to be available.
The images
as a
are like,
stock
where are the
image.
images?
It's not coming. You're not going to find it in a stock image.
Exactly.
Unless they're
So
AI.
you want a
And
beautiful
we don't do that
fat
over here.
lady, but you don't get that,
Exactly.
right? You want a beautiful fat lady, but she has to be like still hourglass fat. If you want a stock model, she doesn't get to have a belly. Or you want a sort of scrawny guy, but he's still handsome. You don't get that in a stock image. He's still nebbishy somehow. Like, so if you want somebody that is outside of the quote unquote standard, then you have to draw them. And then
Mm-hmm.
suddenly that it takes away all the agency of the rest of the inside of the book. Authors put a lot of effort into what's the content of the book, and the cover's supposed to reflect that. And if we
Yeah.
can't
Why I do illustrated covers? Because I'm like I said, I'm a
Yeah.
control freak. I want the cover to look
to
like what
look
I
like what you
pictured up.
want. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
And when you can't find it in a stock image, and when you can't find people to do the clinch cover that you might have wanted in the beginning, you have to draw them. That does not then equal rom-com, right? Like
Correct.
it's a double-edged sword, unfortunately.
I guess we kind of also hit on the question about can something that isn't billed as a rom-com technically fall into the category.
Not if it isn't funny.
Right.
Exactly.
And I think that we've really like kind of nailed down on that. But well, I guess Monique, earlier you were saying that people were saying that where there's smoke, you consider it a romantic drama, but people were saying it was a rom-com to them. Does anyone else have something in their catalog that has like similar vibes that have happened?
Yes, my book that comes out in 1 month, The Divorcee Tante. It's an illustrated cover, also because we're not going to find those stock images, but also because it's if you look at what other books it would be sitting on the shelf next to, it needs to look a certain way. It needs to fit those expectations of the reader. I'm calling it a rom drama plus the romance. The comedy is not there. It's going to be some funny parts, but that's not the center. And so I don't want to misrepresent it in the genre. So, or in the subgenre, I should say. So I'm saying it's a rom, like you're saying, where there's smoke is. You said dramatic
Romantic
romance,
drama.
and I'm saying a drama. But anyway, um, there's comedic parts, but it is not a comedy. It's lots of drama, all the scandal, all the smear campaigns, a villain. That all that's going to be in there. And
A
so, even though
villain.
it's an illustrated cover, yeah, ooh, I got some diabolical villains, plural. You're going to love people, and you're going to hate people to their guts, and I love that. Um, and I want it to feel addictive and alluring, and I want you to also feel the opulence, like Crazy Rich Asians. Yes, there's wealth everywhere, but that's also not the center of the story. So I hope that answered your question.
It did, it did.
Okay.
Lindo, you have your third book that you're working on, correct?
Correct.
Of those, out of the three, do you feel like all of them fit into rom-com correctly, or is there anything that you kind of feel straddles the line into something else?
Honestly, no, I don't think that they're rom-coms. Not one of the three of them, but I do think that they get considered that in the way that we've been discussing,
Hmm.
because they don't. My books are like, you hear the conversation, oh, I hate the third act breakup, or I love it because I want to see the man grovel, or like all the back and forth that there's constantly on social media. And all of my books, I say like there's so many, the three books
You got to
are
celebrate those three.
Exactly.
my three babies are women whose lives are otherwise stable. They're not at risk of losing their job. They're not at risk of
Right.
losing the promotion. They're not at risk of any of that stuff. Their lives are otherwise stable. They just can't get their shit together when it comes to a relationship. And it is the men who are trying to convince, like all three women are basically flight risks. All three women are like, just one inconvenience befalls me that cannot be fixed by a nap or a snack, and I'm out. Like they just, like,
That's
they
a
don't
vibe.
have, yeah, like if it cannot be fixed by a nap or a snack, then I gotta go. Like they cannot handle any like real change to their situation because that's the life they've lived so far. And then these men show up being like, no, but what if you like made space for me? And the women are like, but what if I didn't?
Right.
What if I didn't? What if I just kept doing what I'm doing because I'm comfy? Is there comedy to be had there? Yes, but I don't think my books are rom-coms as much as I love rom-coms. I think my books are contemporary romance. But
I also
like
think
what
you
Monique
should
said,
coin
yeah.
the napper snack thing and put
Yeah.
that on all your
I
ad
agree.
copy.
That's their.
Like, if you ever do merch, you need to put that on a t-shirt.
Yes.
Lindo,
Look,
that is my new motto in
pride
I'd buy
life.
it.
myself on finding these things. If you say something, I'm going to point it out to you, and I expect it to be in your marketing somewhere.
Okay, perfect.
Oh,
Napper
absolutely.
snack. I
That is
got it.
so
I'm writing it
Mia.
down right
Yes, I will. I am your friend, and once you're my friend, if I see an opportunity for your business, I will call it out to you
now. Look,
I
I'm
because
going to
love
put
it.
it in the book,
look,
Mia. I'm putting it in the
we
book.
got to help each other.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I need all the help I can get.
Well, because marketing is hard for us, right? Our
It's
primary thing is the writing. So you write and you write and you're like, okay, now I got to
not
tell people they
marketing.
need to read this. And how do I do that?
Yeah.
So if I hear
Mhm.
something, I'm like, friend, you
Mm-hmm.
just said it right there. Write
Write
that
it
down.
down.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
But
Ashlyn, would you
yeah,
say the same
what
of
was
your book?
I gonna say? Oh,
Oh,
so
go ahead.
I have the R&B series, and it's gonna be a 4-book series. The
Ooh.
first 2 books are funny, right? Rom-com. But the third book had so much more drama to it that it's not quite a rom-com anymore. It's more of what you were saying, the drum rom, because
Baby, yours is drum-com.
yeah, well, that could be too.
Look,
I don't know. I just don't think it had as much funny elements because the things that were happening, like, multiple deaths, dealing with like
on
parental
page?
relationships, off page, but the aftermath was important.
Okay.
It was a couple who they've been friends since college, and now they're adults, and they've been friends with benefits for a long time, but they've secretly been in love with each other this whole time, right? And both of them
Right.
had careers that they wanted to focus on. So
Yeah.
now that he's like, listen, why are we not together? You go through the history of them. And in that history,
Yeah.
you see what brought their relationship together. So it was more focused on like the serious moments than the funny.
Yeah, but you got a second chance drum-com right there. Let's have it. Let's get that going. Let's let the people
Yeah.
know. you know.
So
Well,
I'm
and
writing
also,
book 4 now, and I'm just like, how am I gonna get this one funny? Because this one's a little deep too. So it's again,
It's
it's like
okay to be deep.
balances there.
but like you
I
said, you
think that
had dry
it doesn't have
humor,
to.
and so the deep subject matter and I mean, quote unquote, black humor, those are besties. They go together
Yeah.
real
You
good.
also said
Hmm.
you have a
Yeah.
goofy sense of humor. There's a great, you could throw all kinds of goofy shit into.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I'm working on it.
Well, good.
I think kind of like what Lindo was saying with my debut, I did not. That was the first one somebody called a rom-com, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? It is. It's way more out of the 3 of them. They do get progressively funnier, but maybe one day deals with it's a second chance friends to lovers. They spent the whole last half of the MMC's professional swimming career hooking up because he was so focused on getting an Olympic gold medal. And when they come back together, it's told in a reverse dual timeline. So you start with the heartbreak
Ooh.
and then them meeting again, and then you end
Ashlyn.
with them first meeting and they're happily ever after. And Bryce is in a dark
Yeah.
place throughout that entire book. Like the only light that he has in his life is Josie. And people, I mean, that is a point of tension with my readers. Some
Hmm.
people really, really like him, and some people really, really don't for that reason, because he's struggling with anxiety. He's struggling with post-career depression. And he's trying to figure out what's coming next. And when somebody was like, "Oh, this was such a great rom-com," I'm like, Bryce is 2 sentences away
It
from a
might just be your
full
voice.
breakdown.
Yeah.
If your
Yeah.
voice is light and the
Yeah.
tone of your voice in the writing, that could be the reason. But also, reverse duo timeline? Can we just pause on that for a moment?
Right?
Did anybody else pause on that? Because
I
I
did.
did. As
That's
soon as
like
you said that, I was
Ashlyn.
like,
Oh,
I
So
girl.
like
many
that.
people hate it.
Whatever.
I
Those
know.
people don't even
What do
know.
they
Those
know,
are probably going to be
Ashlyn?
the bandwagon fans that
And
Right.
jump on board
yeah,
afterwards.
that
you
book,
get snaps for that because that's
Yes.
challenging.
I can't
it
snap on
really
his hand, but
was.
I just go like this.
Yeah, it was challenging, but I really wanted to show the highlights of, they didn't live in the same state. He was traveling for, being a professional athlete, the hours and hours of training that go into that. She was chasing a career as a journalist for the sport. That fell apart, that kind of thing. And just, I mean, at the core, that whole series is about dreams and what you do with them, what you do when you achieve them, what
Mm-hmm.
happens when you have to let them go. And so it was very complicated. I sent it to my editor and I texted my best friend and I'm like, never again. I'm not doing a reverse dual timeline ever
I don't know.
again.
Why not? You need to use that to sell this book because I feel like people will stop and pause on that. Because who else is marketing their book is that?
Yeah, whenever I do signings, that is always the thing that people are like, wait, what?
Yes.
I think it's very
Yes.
impressive.
Yeah.
Me too. If I were you, I would use that as a selling point often.
Yeah, like we were just talking about like Mia, our dear friend Margot Hendricks, aka Elizabeth Grace, and our other dear
Mm-hmm.
friend Kelly Kane. We were talking about like the business side of stuff, and when you go on Amazon and you scroll down and you look at like the different categories that stand out and that pop out, like
Mm-hmm.
for a Hoffer teacher, it could be like parent teacher romance. So if you're into that sort of
Yes.
thing, you buy that. You can literally like put that in like the
Yeah.
category of reverse dual timeline, and then
Yeah. In my
that'll
mind,
definitely get somebody's attention.
I need
the
to I
seven
need
year
to
slip,
update those. So,
look at the 7 year slip and Josie Silver's One Day in December.
December, yep.
Those two, I feel like this would fit on the shelf with that. If I were you, I would be selling to a wide audience. You all should just know this. I'm very anal and logistical, and I hear all the business stuff. That's all my brain hears. So when we're talking, like we have a little writer group where we just do sprints and stuff. I'll be like, hold, write that down, because
I will take any
we think
advice I can
keywords
get.
and all the business
I'm
stuff that,
happy to relinquish my
yeah,
whole situation to you, Mia. You
Yeah.
can have it. It's fine.
no,
Right?
What do
no,
you
I'm
want?
like, so are you
no.
busy
I
this
just will be.
week?
No, I don't do any of this. I listen as a friend, and anything that I think can help, I'm like on the nose right there.
So let's go to this next. I guess the next question is, what is the hardest part of writing rom-coms? But everybody kind of touched on that. So if there's anything that you want to kind of add to that.
The comedy part.
So you saying the comedic part is the hardest
Yeah,
part,
well, for
Monique?
me it is because I think it's just because of my background. I like having majored in theater. I've brought this up during different podcasts before. The comedic part's the hard part for me because I had it drilled into my head. You know, making someone cry is easier than making them laugh. So
Oh, that's
like
true. That's
there's a
poignant.
famous quote, dying is easy, comedy is hard.
Mm.
Mm,
And making sure that you're hitting the joke, making sure that you're getting the punchline, making sure that the joke really I'm not precious about stuff. I will kill my darlings if the joke isn't working, and I'll start over again. Like this
Mm-hmm.
isn't funny. This isn't working. If I don't find it funny, then I'll get rid of it. So I try very, very hard, and I work very, very hard to get those laughs. So that's why I like if you categorize something as a rom com and it's not intentionally funny and rom com and comedy, period. So I work very hard, and I don't take that for granted because it does take a lot of skill, and
yeah.
it does take a lot of time, and it does take a lot of speaking about craft work. It takes, like what Mia mentioned, like I watch videos on the anatomy of a joke. I read craft books about like how to craft a joke and stuff like that. I take this seriously. It's like, yeah, it's all kiki and haha, but I take this shit seriously because
Yeah.
this ain't easy. So for me, that's the toughest part is getting the laugh. And like I said, I write my books for me. So I write whatever I think is funny in the hopes that other people think it's funny too.
Right.
But yeah, getting to that point where you can actually like have the humor in there, that's the toughest part. And just something that I saw like on Twitter a long time ago. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but a long time ago, somebody was talking about rom-coms and they were like, the humor comes from the banter between the two main characters. And respectfully, I disagree. Because yes, the humor does come from the banter from the two main characters, but there's banter to be found everywhere. Like what who mentioned the bromance? Was that you, Ashley?
Ashley.
Yeah. Like if you're mining for is humor between the two main characters, that's lost opportunities. What about when they're at their job? What about when they're at their job? What about when they're hanging out with their homies? What about when they're at the gym, at the barbershop, hanging out with their parents? There's humor to be found in that. Banter isn't just romantic banter. There's banter that can be found within their friends, with them interacting with strangers. With that, like there's a scene. Like I keep going back to Offer Teacher, but there's a scene in there where Latrice is talking to her sister Nadia, and she tells her, Nathan is Quincy's teacher, and then Nadia starts bursting out laughing, and then all these strangers are turning around looking at them like, what's going on? And then she literally tells the strangers, hey, this is my sister, she fucked her son's teacher. And then like the strangers are like, oh, yikes. It's, like you can have moments where there is humor where it doesn't have to be the two main characters. And,
I agree.
For me, in my humble opinion, you are, you're doing yourself a huge disservice if you're only looking for humor with only that. So yeah, like the humor part is the tough part, but you got to look for it in various different areas of your manuscript. You got to make sure that there's funny haha happening, where along with the romance, there has to be funny haha happening, and not just with our two leads. There has to be funny haha happening throughout the book, or else why call it a comedy?
And anecdotally, that famous quote of Joanne Woodward being like, "What's your favorite thing about Paul Newman, who was at the time one of the most beautiful people alive?" And she said, "He makes me laugh." Right. So there's a reason why that's an enduring quality and a skill that you have to work hard to perfect.
True. Yes. And you don't want to run into banter fatigue either. You don't want to put pressure on your banter to always produce, humor, because these two people also have to have conversations where they're getting to know each other, right? And sometimes the conversations aren't going to be funny. There's not always going to be a place to slip a joke in there. So then now you have to work on the balance and finding those jokes elsewhere. So things can be funny. Like in book 2, it's a friends to lovers, right? And the whole friends group is there. They're visiting their HBCU for homecoming. And the main couple, they've had a little spicy moment, and they accidentally left a toy in the bed, right? So they're like on the floor, they're sitting around talking, and the MMC comes in and sits down, and it starts buzzing, right? Right underneath him. So he grabs it, pulls it up, and everybody's like, whoa, like, what is that? And so that moment, you know what I'm saying?
That is good. Yes, we love that.
He's like, oh, it's a dual rabbit. They're like, a what? What is that? So,
yes.
You just have moments like that where the moment is funny. The characters themselves weren't trying to be funny, but you put the comedy in anywhere. It could
lean into the cringe. I feel like people are too afraid to do that. Lean into the cringe. Francesca Ramsey said that when she's the leopards eat your face lady. She said that on Threads when she was talking about like how people feel too afraid to post stuff on social media because they feel like it's cringy. Lean into the cringe. The cringe is funny.
Life is crazy sometimes.
I took a sitcom writing class. One of the first questions that Jason Romaine was a teacher, and he said one of the first questions he asked us was, tell us the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you. Go. And then we bounced around, and then it got to me. And I'm not embarrassed by this because it happened 20 years ago, and I'm not the only person on the planet has ever had something embarrassing happen to them. I was giving my boyfriend at the time a hand job, and his mom walked in.
Ooh.
So, yeah. Okay, I can laugh at it now. I can laugh at it now because it's hilarious. But yeah, it's like embarrassing stuff happens. It's like there's not a single person on this planet unless you're a newborn who hasn't had anything embarrassing happen to them. So exactly, like lean into the cringe, lean into the embarrassment. Go ahead and laugh. It's funny as hell.
I did that to
She
my.
immediately ran back out after she noticed what was happening.
I hope so.
Awkward.
I didn't have my main character walk in and see other people, enjoying themselves. But my second book, she's older woman, younger man, and she wears glasses. She was expecting her friend to come over and pick something up, and so she got a text message just as she was going into the shower, and she kind of half looked at it and said, "Yeah, the side door is open. It's on the table." And then she comes downstairs, and there he is, the love interest, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "You said I could come over." And she's like, "No, I didn't." And meanwhile, her adult son is like, "Mom, where are your glasses?" And then he starts, like, he's uproariously laughing at her, and then starts texting, and she says, "Who are you texting?" He says, "Dad, last week he put the cheese in the cupboard and the crackers in the fridge. I don't know which one is worse." And so he's laughing at his mom, who's dying of embarrassment because she's in her pajamas in front of the love interest because she told him he could come over, but she did not think she was telling him he could come over. I feel like people with glasses make those kinds of fun mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
I think, too, kind of going off what everybody's been saying, for me, one of the hardest parts is establishing the characters and learning who the characters are, because when you let their personality shine through, you get that humor. Like, so book 3 is about Ronan and Mia, and the whole first 2 books, it's the fact that Mia has established herself as this, like, badass woman who takes no shit, doesn't care about anything, and as a result, Bryce is terrified of her. Like, nice. Absolutely terrified.
That's a great place for a man to be, honestly.
Right?
Yes.
Well, and he's also dating her best friend, and he has broken the best friend's heart, so Mia is just like, you are on thin ice, sir. And it stays consistent through the whole series. And that just layer of fear, like, he is terrified to ask her to go out to dinner with all of their friends because he's like, she scares me. She's going to say something mean to me and I'm not going to be able to handle it. And knowing that characterization has made Mia a much stronger character even into her own book, but we can keep that humor going. Yeah. And, there's a scene in the 3rd book where Bryce wants to meet with everybody about something with him and Josie, and Mia makes a comment because Carter, his best friend, looks panicked that Bryce and Josie are about to break up, and Mia's like, you look like a child of divorce. Your parents are fine. You need to calm down. And then he's like, how do you know? How do you know? And she's like, I don't, but we're just gonna hope, and if it's, if it is a breakup announcement, I'm gonna kick his ass. It's fine. So, yeah, knowing those characters, like Monique said, that is something I dedicate a lot of time to, because I know personalities will shine through, and that'll make the humor come alive.
And another fun thing, too, is trying not to let the secondary or tertiary characters take over, because they are funny. Yeah. And sometimes they can try to outshine in the moment. So, like, okay, you're funny and all, but please step back a little bit because it's not your story. This is not your romance.
Right.
So I do struggle with that a little bit because I love the friends. The friends are the funniest ones who will tell it like it is, even when especially with the FMC, when she doesn't want to acknowledge that she's fallen for this guy or whoever it is. Those friends are hilarious, and they come in there like, please, friend, stop lying to yourself. You want that man and you want to do grown-up things with him. So, yeah.
Make it sleepover.
Like, keeping them all, they are on the cusp of the spotlight. That's where they need to stay a little bit.
You do it well, though. Like, you've done it across all the books that I've read from you in all of your different series. Like, I remember beta reading for a couple of them being like, oh, yes. But I want their story now. So they're doing too much.
So I love the best friends. I love the best friends because they are always the best. They are funny. Yeah. They have advice. They are honest, and they are loyal to, like, super loyal. So, like, with the friendship contract, Leah in that one, everybody's like, when is Leah's book coming? I'm like, I don't have plans for it just yet. But she was.
I told you that a long time ago.
I loved her.
That book
I
was
am
so
writing her book
fun,
though.
though.
Yeah, I love the friends though. You do need a good friend in the book to tell them like it is.
Yeah, I have something that I'm working on where one of the male main characters in Tell Me I'm Not Dreaming, that's coming out in August, he has siblings, and
Oh
two of the
yes.
siblings get their own novelettes. And what I want to do is that the female main characters are cousins, and the two male main characters are brothers. And so I want to release both books on the same day,
Do
have
it.
them and
Okay.
have them both
Yeah.
have each book be like 20K pages or 20K words pages. Jesus, 20K
I'm like,
words.
Wow. Hold on.
I'm ambitious, but I'm not that ambitious. 20K, each book be 20K words, and
Yeah.
like and drop them both on the same day. So it's like, oh, I love these best friends. I want to read their book. Cool, it comes out the same day.
Yes. Duet.
There you go.
Make it a
That's
duet.
clever.
There you go.
yeah.
I'm working on it.
Very clever.
Yeah, that is very clever. I think the last question, which we've all touched on in different ways, is how you drive diversity in your rom-com, especially when everything is cis white, cishet white, hallmarky, or not a goddamn rom-com. How are you driving your diversity while also making sure it's that rom-com that it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
I am taking the advice of a man I've had a crush on since I was a teenager, Three Stacks. He said on the Source Awards, the South got something to say. Black rom-com writers got something to say.
Mm.
With your chest.
So, and for, in Ashlyn's case, plus size characters got something to say. So that's how I'm seeing it, because the audience is there. The audience is there. You can write a damn rom com with a mermaid and a kraken. Somebody gonna read it.
Yep.
Do you have a recommendation for a mermaid and a kraken?
I do not. I just made that up just
I
now.
was gonna say, I've got a pen. Let me write it down.
Okay.
I feel
But
like
yeah,
that needs to happen.
Somebody needs to write it.
Like, we have something to say, and it's not just white, cis, hetero, yada yada yada. Everybody else got something that they want to say too, and there's plenty of people who want to hear it. So that's how I take
Right.
it.
And there's room.
Yeah.
There's room for
Yes.
everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
And also, I just feel like if you're telling, I live in Toronto, and we are famously a multicultural city. I don't think it's more multicultural than any other city. I think cities, by definition, tend to be more multicultural. You can't have, a million people smushed in one, small space and not have diversity. But Toronto gets credit for that in, I don't know, in weird ways. If I'm writing a story set in Toronto, how would I then not have any of those people walking around? How would I not have any of those people in the story? How would I not have any of those people interacting with each other? That's just ludicrous. And that's my big complaint with books. Like, I don't want people writing outside of their experience. I don't want them to stretch themselves. I don't want them to, if they don't have the range, like, I don't want that. But tell me that you went to a coffee shop and there was no one, like, not anybody wearing a rainbow pin, not anybody with like nothing, not somebody with a turban, not one Sikh man anywhere. Seriously, in your whole book, you ordered Chinese food, but there were no Chinese people making the food. Where were the Chinese people? Like, and so I just think if you're making a world, if you're filling it with what you see around you, like, it's your imagination. You can make it be whatever you want, and you have chosen not to put any queer people, any fat people, any black people, any brown people. You have made that choice, and that's your right. That is your right. Then I get to not read it because I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. Well, okay, so piggybacking on that, there's that whole idea of somebody on TikTok, some white woman, was saying like, well, I'm writing something that's historically in Europe, and so everybody there is white. That's why I'm not being diverse. I was like, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be race or ethnicity, though. There's disability, there's neurodivergence, there's other ways that you can go about including diversity in your story. And you just said you're shutting everything down and focused on this, on whiteness. And that's a problem too, because sure, have your little white book. I don't give a fuck, but there's more to it. I'm not gonna read it. I don't care. But like, you're sitting here saying that it's not going to be diverse because everybody it's white because of when it was happening. And I was like, okay, but you can represent diversity in other ways. And I think that people have a tendency to look at diversity as just race or body image, and they forget about neurological or disabilities, like physical disabilities, or class or caste, or all these other things that happen that consider that are a part of diversity, and that's what's frustrating. And
You ain't got
that's
no
what's
gay white
frustrating
folks in your book.
because
Well,
we know
all the
it's a
time
whole
too,
lot of
I
them.
think a lot of people just don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so what I'm saying is people also need to do the work, they're afraid to include certain aspects or segments of society because they don't want to be called out for doing it wrong. And it doesn't have to be hard if you just fill the world with color and shapes and sizes and different facets. It just comes second nature to me because I see everything. I see all colors, shapes, sizes, whatever it is, I see it all. And so it's just natural that if I'm putting somebody in, I'm just going to throw characters in. They don't have to be the statement piece either. People think that it has to be some poignant reason why you included this other segment of society, and it doesn't have to be. They
Like
could be
they
just the
exist.
serving the
Just put them in
coffee,
there because they exist.
and why does it have to be highlighted as such? Oh, I include. Okay, well, just did the person serve the coffee well? That's all they needed to do in this example. They don't have to be doing something or holding up a picket sign or something like that. They don't have to do all of that. They can just be present because we pass by people regularly that fit, in our world.
Like
But
just
I do think
hire.
people are afraid of backlash. And so they don't want to do it because they're weary that somebody's going to say they did it wrong.
It's like if you
And they're
hire a
putting too much on it.
sensitivity reader and you actually listen to them, you're probably gonna be fine.
I know, but I'm saying you don't even need a sensitivity reader to include a black coffee shop clerk, or cashier.
Right.
It doesn't have to be hard. People are
Unless you
making
make
it
them
more
a
difficult than
caricature.
it needs to be, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I
You
also think that
know,
there's an element of I have to justify why I made this choice, and you don't have to justify it. That lady's fat because she's
right.
fat. Who cares? Like that's the sum
And
total of it.
also,
Like,
their stereotypes may seep into it, is what they're really afraid of. Because if
yeah,
you put that black coffee shop cashier, is
Ooh,
that
ooh.
person going to be rolling their neck as they take your order? Are
of
they
Mm-hmm.
course
going to
they
be
are. That's the only way
rolling
we
their
speak.
eyes? Are
Yeah,
their braids going to have to be a certain way? Are they going to have to snap
obviously.
their fingers just to take your order? It's like, really? They don't
And
need to be
her
having
name is
watermelon
going to
and
be
chicken
Shaniqua.
just to serve some coffee.
Woo, woo.
That's just my thoughts on the
Yeah,
matter. I
100%.
just feel like that's what people are afraid of, is that the racism will show.
Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's definitely an element, like when talking about filling your world, the imaginary place that you created for your characters. It really is just an element of what do you value? Like you, the
Hmm.
author, what do you value? Are your characters going to say grace before they eat their food? It does. They don't have to. It doesn't have to mean anything. It doesn't have to be a big, huge drama that they do. But have you chosen to do that? That's all of those little things are choices you make based on the characters that you created. Like Ashlyn was saying, you get to know the character, you get to know who they are, you get to know all their little quirks that sometimes happen against your will. My characters do things against my will all the time.
Mm.
And and then the next thing you know, you're like, oh, she absolutely would do this, or he would never say that, or she totally would go there. And it is because it is true to the person as they have developed. And then, so as an author, does your character just go to the coffee shop and say, oh, yeah, no, she was here before her transition and now she's still working here, and then move on? Or is it 7 paragraphs about, oh, there's a trans woman? Like, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be 7 paragraphs.
Right.
It can literally be, oh yeah, I remember before her transition, she took some time off, but now she's back. It's good to see her again, and then keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
It can be as simple as that. What you're saying, Mia, about like not getting it wrong. I don't know anything about the trans experience, and I'm not speaking on it in a positive or negative way. I'm acknowledging that a trans person exists in the world. Like,
Right.
it can be as simple as that. They just
Hmm.
can't make it as simple as that. Like, it has to be complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I know from writing from a place of being a queer author and writing queer characters, one of my characters identifies as bi and one of my characters identifies as pan. I am a pan author. I am happily out loud proud about that. But I still experience that bi erasure that comes because, you know, the bi MMC ends up in a hetero relationship. The pan FMC ends up in a hetero relationship. That does not erase who they are at their core. That does not erase their sexual identity. It does not erase what they mean within their own communities. And I've gotten people that have actually come to me and they're like, well, that just doesn't happen. You wouldn't understand. You're not bi.
So
And
they're
I'm
just gonna
like,
tell you who you are?
I'm like, oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Do I not post about being, you know, a pan author enough? Do I not post about this being, you know, a safe space for the
I mean, but you
LGBT?
shouldn't even have to post about that. That's your
Correct.
business if you want to.
Correct.
I
And, you
mean,
know, so I think
I would have an
that I
attitude.
agree with
Me's ready to
I would
fight.
have such an attitude about it.
I agree with, you know, what we were saying, what was being said earlier about people being afraid to step out of their comfort zone. And as a white woman, I will never ever write from the experience of a trans person, of a black woman, of a brown woman, of an Asian woman, because that's not my story to tell. But that does not mean that I can't include them in the narrative, because they are I've I've never understood the people that like you were saying about how, oh, I'm only going to write the white experience. That's not life. That has never been life. It never will be life. And, you know, Monique was saying sensitivity readers are so helpful. And I, as an editor, have no problem pointing out when an author needs to hire a sensitivity reader. Because
Right.
if I, as an educated white woman who listens to the BIPOC community or the queer community, can call out racism, I will. And if I see it in your writing, I'm absolutely going to recommend a sensitivity reader for that reason, because you can include diversity, and there's a way to do it right and there's a way to do it wrong. Don't just stick it in with 4 paragraphs about, you know, the black woman working at the store or the trans woman working at the coffee shop. Just, people exist, they are who they are, and let them exist.
It's like, don't try to fill a quota. Like in my debut, the female main character's best friend is a black trans woman. I hired a black trans woman to read it and tell me what, if there's any parts in there that are potentially offensive or disrespectful. I don't want to be offensive or disrespectful.
Exactly.
And she said, I see where you're going with this, but there's some parts where that need to be fixed. And I said, if I put anything in this book that was offensive, I'm terribly sorry. Please tell me what to fix. And each and every single note that she gave me, I listened to. There's literally only one note. She wanted me to include Janae in a scene that I just didn't think Janae should be in, but that's literally it. I just didn't put Janae in that one scene. But everything else that Giselle James said to me, oh, you want to include this, you want to include this, fillers for her face, mention top surgery, mention this, mention that. How did her transition go? How did she start? Oh, well, first she started with perfume, then makeup, then wigs, then nails. You know, we went through the whole entire thing. And she was like, okay, let's try this, let's try that. I listened to everything that woman said to me. And I think that's the problem. A lot of people are just like, I want to fill a quota, but I want to do it my way. And they don't want to listen to somebody who actually knows. Because how many times have we seen somebody write something offensive as fuck? And then when it comes time to take responsibility for it, but I hired a sensitivity reader. Don't go throwing the sensitivity reader under the bus. You didn't listen to them.
Yes.
You're hiring this person. I hired this person. I paid her my money. And she even said to me, you know what? I was afraid that you weren't going to listen to me. And if that was the case, I was going to tell you, you know what, just make her sis.
Oh
But the
wow.
fact that you're willing, the fact that you're willing to listen to what I'm saying, because I wasn't expecting you to, and I said, I paid you for a reason. I'm not about to waste my money and then not listen to you.
Right. And you're trying
So
to
yeah,
respect the community. That's the thing.
exactly.
Exactly. I know that I'm gonna take my plan right now is to take a little break from my swimming series after Yesterday I Cared releases, and I have had this idea for a long time of a male romance where one is a country music star and one is a baseball player. That's going to involve a Mexican American character, and I'm already talking to my cousin who is a Mexican American, talking to her fiance. I have sensitivity readers that I want to look. I am not going to write from his perspective because, again, that is not my story to tell. But I want to make sure everything that he's involved in is right. And to hire somebody to do that and not listen to them blows my mind.
Wild.
If
It's wild.
if you are so fragile, for lack of a better word, and you are not ready to listen, to learn, to accept that you're going to make mistakes, then just don't even try it. Like I had a very, I can't even remember the comment, but I had a editing client that had a very, well, on top of it, she hit me with a really racist comment, followed immediately by a very homophobic comment, and I'm like, whoa. Whoa.
Nice.
Whoa. I had to like send copies of what I was saying to, my friend and the fellow editors to be like, I want to make sure I'm not crossing a line here either, but this is not okay, and I'm going to call it out immediately. And her response to me was immediately, oh my gosh, I see what you're saying. I can't even believe I wrote that. And I provide her with articles. I provide her with everything to learn and educate herself. And then she said that she's like, I'm hiring a sensitivity reader immediately. And I'm like, good. You need to do one for both the racist comment, one for the homophobic comment, because you need to make sure, I'm not a trans woman. I'm not going to see everything offensive. I'm not a Latinx person. I'm not going to notice everything. So if you're going to include that diversity, especially from the point of view of a white woman, you have to put in the work, and you have to be willing to listen and learn and know you're not going to be perfect.
Yeah, that's why I tell people I aspire to be an ally. I don't just call myself one, because as far as I'm concerned, whatever group that I'm claiming to be an ally for, they get to tell me that I'm an ally.
Exactly.
I aspire to be an ally to the LGBT community. They have to tell me I'm one. So I think that a lot of folks, they just like want to throw the word like, I'm an ally, I'm an ally, I'm an ally. And like, that's the extent of it.
Yeah.
No actual work, no actual internalization, no actual learning. They just want to label themselves an ally and then just call it a day.
And no action to follow up. Like, once you do that learning, you still have a responsibility to, in whatever way you can, show up. It's not just, it's not like saying, oh, I'm an ally, and then actively, working to take rights away from people who identify in that community. So you have to have that balance.
Agreed. But I want to like wrap it up with our latest releases or upcoming releases, elevator pitches, and kind of tell us where we can find you all on the socials, your website, and so forth.
I'm on TikTok, IG, Threads. Threads and IG is at Monique Fisher Author. TikTok is at Monique Fisher Author. And Blue Sky is at M Fisher Author. And my next book is Tell Me I'm Not Dreaming, coming out August 29th. The pre-order link is already available. I'm gonna do the cover reveal next week, so you'll be able to go on my website and then see the cover and then be able to pre-order it. Okay, done.
Okay, Olivia?
Okay, so Linden everywhere, either Olivia Linden or Olivia Linden author. And my website is queenofvibes, VIBEZ.com. And my next release, I don't have a date yet. But the first 3 books in the R&B series are already out. My last release was a novella for Valentine's Day, Deja Vu. It's a little steamy, if you want a little steamy little Valentine story, it's out there. So, and I look forward to seeing everybody at Black Romance Fest.
Yes, you've already got a friend in me.
Yes.
I'll go next then. I am on most of the time Instagram. I'm trying harder to be on TikTok and Threads. I'm always there as Mia Heintzelman author on all platforms. Also on Facebook and Blue Sky as Mia Heintzelman author. My next release is The Divorce Tante from Honey Blossom Press, and it's coming out June 24th. So 1 month from today, mark your calendars. It is available for pre-order now. I'll be having swag at Black Romance Book Fest for it. And it's hijinks, high society, and happily ever after. So hopefully you find it and love it.
Sounds good.
And Lindo, passing to you.
The third book in the Queen City Queen series is called The Inscrutable Mr. Yang. It is about Claudia, who has struggled with anxiety her whole life, and she is sort of tasked with getting information out of Ian for other reasons, and she's worried about having to hang around with someone who looks as angry as she feels inside, because she's worried that she can't keep her mask on with someone like that. And it is about how they figure out what their masks are and what's underneath the masks. It is released June 26th, and you can find it at all digital retailers. I am Lindo Forbes at all platforms, though I'm usually active on Instagram and Threads. And my website is lindoforbes.com. Ashlyn.
Okay, I am Ashlyn Harmon. The third book in my Adair Swimming series, Yesterday I Cared, comes out June 27th. I do not have pre-orders up yet, but they should be there soon. The first 2 books, Maybe One Day and Tell Me Tomorrow, are available on KU. So if you like found family, mental health rep, queer rep, body positivity, all my FMCs are plus size. Be sure to check them out. I am Ash Writes Romance on all social media platforms, most active on Instagram and Threads and TikTok when I have enough time to batch film stuff. But otherwise, my website is ashlynharmon.com for editing services and signed copies.
Okay, good. I
Thank
follow
you
you
all.
all already.
Of course you do, Mia. Thank y'all all for coming on today. I'm so happy. I know we had hijinks and shenanigans with my comedy over here. But this has been Ray's Corner, and I'm thankful for everybody that came on and shared some of the laughs and the realness, and we talked about some deep stuff today. Um, Pretty much I'm gonna wrap it there because, like, let's be honest, we talked about the realness, we talked about the rewards and the way that working together, even though we do this job separately, is so important. um so thank y'all for being an inspiration to me and to anyone who might be listening and watching who is thinking about being an author or wants to better understand authors. Let's be for real. Thank you, Mia, Monique, Lindo, Ashlyn, and Olivia for coming on today. And as a reminder, nobody puts Ray in the corner but herself. And if we're talking about books, we out.